All right, we are now recording our session today. So thank you so much for joining our ECE webinar series. This is our fall webinar series, and we're really excited to have a guest presenter, facilitator for all three webinars. And I think you're going to really love her. If you haven't attended a webinar with her before, I think you're really going to love her and miss her by the end of her 3 sessions. So let's just jump right in with some of the housekeeping things that we want to make sure we cover quick before we get started. Always have to do a shameless plug for our early childhood education degree programs at Rasmussen University. We are a fully online university, and we do have students in all 50 states, not necessarily all at exactly the same time, but pretty close. And so we'd love to have you join our fully online associate degree or bachelor completer degree. If you are interested, be sure to look on our website at rasmussen.edu. All the info you need is there, including a place where you can ask questions and do a tuition calculator to see how it all adds up, because we know that that is super important. You can always reach out if you have any questions at any time. My slide is blank. I'm not sure why, but it is. Okay,
Ours is not blank.
Yours is not blank. Okay,
No.
well, that's good, I guess. Thank you for that. So we do have education benefits in working with corporate alliances or corporate partners. So if you work in the early childhood education field, you might want to double check to see if we have a partnership with your organization. Some of the larger partners or some of the larger organizations we do work with, but then we also work with smaller ones, regional childcare programs, or even state programs that are just in one state and small mom and pop operations sometimes too. So it's really important to double check, and you can ask an admissions advisor when you contact us to see if you are perhaps working for a company that has a tuition alliance, which really means you have a tuition discount or reduction off of your tuition costs. And so it really does help reduce the time or reduce the cost to completing your degree. So be sure to ask if that's the case.
Mary, many
Yes.
students have no sound.
No sound. Interesting. We had this happen once before. Let's see.
And some of them can't see the slides.
Interesting. Yeah. For those that can hear but can't see, same thing. It has happened once before. Sometimes it's your speaker. Absolutely. Thank you, Barry. And sometimes it's your mute. So that's possible. If you are logging in on a what am I going to say, a tablet computer, you may need to use the app. It may restrict things otherwise. But logging out and logging back in, you have a unique code to your link, so I can track your attendance through that unique code. Your camera and mic are disabled, but that should not cause any issues. So log out and log back in.
For my purpose, if they don't see it, but they hear it, that's okay.
Yes, that's okay too. And it might pop in depending on where you are. It might be,
Right.
You know, looks like there's people getting upset. I will cover those in just a second. Yes, we all have our limits. So let's see. So if you have any questions or comments, put it in the chat. Obviously, we figured out where that is by our pre-session conversation. So make sure that you use that and let us know what questions, thoughts, comments, or answers you might have. And then we will include you in the conversation. You do have one in-service hour that will be awarded to you upon completion and participation in this session. You do need to participate or be in attendance for a majority of the session in order to get your certificate, and it will be sent in by email to the email you used to register for the session. And then when that happens, it will be a link within the email that you'll go ahead and click, and it'll open up your certificate for you. Do note that we do not have this session or any of our sessions prior approved in any state towards your registry training. So we don't have that as something we do ahead of time. It would just be very cumbersome for us. So we do this instead, also at a shorter time frame than most of those states that require that pre-authorization require us from us. So what you'll have to do is take that certificate and submit it on your own to your particular state's registry to see if and how it will be recognized by that registry. Some states may not allow it unless it was previously approved. Others might, but it's always worth the opportunity to ask. So you will need to go ahead and make sure that you do that on your own, in your own time, on your own accord. So let's jump in and introduce our wonderful presenter who you've already heard from tonight. Our facilitator is Lois Wachtel. She has a Master of Science, I believe it's in education, but might be early childhood education. She is an instructor with us at Rasmussen, and she's been here, Lois, I just looked up how many years you've been here. Was it 13?
No, it can't be.
I think maybe it was 11.
I
I
think
just looked it
11.
up and it's out of my brain that fast before the session. So
A long time.
it's a long time, and we've been really honored to have her as a team member for our early childhood education students, as well as our college and university students as well, because she does do trainings for other faculty and other departments across the university, and she is quite well loved. So let me go ahead, as you are saying hello, Lois, I'm going to go ahead and upload your PowerPoint. And you should be able then to move the PowerPoint, I
Okay,
believe,
perfect.
because you are a presenter. If not, I'll have you upload it and then we'll go
No,
from there.
because no, I can't.
No? Did you can you see the pages to turn the pages or
Yeah,
not?
but it's not letting me.
It's not
Oh,
letting you.
there. Okay, now it is.
Now it is? Okay. Have you moved anything yet?
I have, but
Oh, perfect. There you go.
is
It's a little slow, it feels like today.
there we go. Okay, so I
Yep.
am thrilled to be here. Language and literacy is really a baby of mine and one of my favorite topics to talk about. My hardest decision was how to keep this actual PowerPoint and the workshop to an hour. So yesterday I took some things out. Yesterday I put some things back in. So I sort of want to go with where your interests are and actually give you the opportunity to interact within the chat and share experiences that you had and some activities that you do in your classroom. So hopefully we'll be able to have that back and forth within the workshop. So for tonight, we're going to begin talking about bringing literacy into your classroom from the minute the children walk into your classroom. Because for me, what happens at the very beginning in your classroom really sets the tone for your entire day. In addition, we're going to talk about ways to make your early childhood classroom filled with literacy rich materials and activities. Then we're going to talk about some ways and some activities that you can bring into the classroom to encourage children to play with language, play with literacy throughout the entire class. Mary, my chat keeps going on and off, so if I need to do something, if you would let me know if I'm missing something because I'm losing it. Okay,
Yes, I know.
it's
This is
okay.
weird. It's glitchy today. Very
We're good.
glitchy. Yep. Can I just
And
say
I
something
guess,
quick?
mhm.
If you're participating and you are seeing slides right now, that's good. If you are not seeing slides right now, you need to log out and log back in and then you will start seeing the slides. For some reason, I'm not sure why, it is glitchy today. So please go ahead and log out and log back in. We track you internally. So you don't need to tell me you're back. You don't need to put your name in, none of that. Just log out and log back in and it will track you.
And
Sorry,
I'm going to
Lois.
tell you, even if you're not seeing the slides, you're still going to be able to follow along.
Mhm.
And I don't know if there's some way, but I would be very happy to share the PowerPoint with you
Mhm.
afterwards if you need to. So
Yes.
let's not, no stress tonight.
Yes.
And my chat is doing the same thing, Patricia. It's just not updating, or it is updating, but it's very slow. That's
Yes.
okay. So basically, my goals tonight is that we have some fun playing with language and literacy. And I'm hoping that you will leave here with at least one activity that you can bring into your classroom, hopefully a lot more, but one is a good start. So let's move into this. So what am I talking about before morning circle time? For me, everything that happened in my classroom when I was in the classroom, and even when I'm doing workshops or I'm in a classroom doing maybe a week-long observation, that initial welcome set the tone. So I wanted to bring something in that would go beyond just welcoming the children with literacy. So what we did in our classroom is we had on the door a huge letter H. When we initially did this, it did not work. However, when we had the children decorate the H, it gave them, I guess, where they began to recognize that that H was a part of them, where they had, they made a connection to the H. So when my children came into the classroom, when they saw that H, they had a choice. They could give me a high five, a hug, they could just say hello, or we did a happy dance. The power of that H was it has a H sound. It reinforced the sound of the letter H, and I was able to do that on a regular basis with my welcome. Plus, it assured that I recognized every child who walked into my class. It wasn't the time for me for parents to come and have conversations with me because I wanted that introduction. I wanted that moment with each child. So the H worked and it allowed me to bring phonological awareness immediately into that classroom because in addition to saying, okay, do you want to give me a high five, a hug, hello, I might say, do you want to give me a hug or hello? So they began to make the connection between that letter H and their choices. In addition, we had all of our children sign in, and we started this with twos. I understand my twos could not write their name, but they could make a fingerprint of their hand from next to their picture as a way of signing in. I wanted them to understand that print had meaning. I wanted to validate their name. I wanted to begin to have these children begin to recognize their name. And of course, when we started it with twos, by the time we moved to the fours, they were writing their name. So it was kind of amazing for us for them to see the difference between what they did as a two and what they did, say, right before they went to kindergarten. So that was really powerful for me. In addition, as I'm sure most of you do, we always did a morning meeting. And when we did our morning meeting, we always brought language in. Before the morning meeting, however, we did activities that validated language. Keep in mind that when you do your morning activities or your activities before they actually do their morning meeting, in that you want to make sure that those activities are super easy for your children. Whoops, I lost
Whoops,
my
sorry.
whole PowerPoint.
I didn't mean to do that.
Oh, I knew Mary would do that. But
That was
whatever
a
you're doing,
surprise.
whatever you're doing for your morning activities, bring in language, bring in letters, give them the opportunity to interact, give them the opportunity to maybe give them a big bag and pick a letter and let them see if they can figure out which items in that bag are of a certain letter. And when you're doing a letter, I think you need to do the sound, because being able to recognize the letters is alphabet knowledge for sure. But without knowing the sound of the letter, they are never going to be able to put those sounds together to make a word. And that's the power of those activities. I'm very curious. Do any of you do, well, never mind. I'm going to wait. So let's see if I can move. Whoops. Okay. Another important part of our morning day and our morning routine was we always went over a daily schedule. So when we did our morning meeting, we always used a schedule. And I encourage you to think about the schedules that you are using right now. And the reason I say that is some of the schedules are great, right? Are really, really good. However, if the children can't read them, which they can't, you need to make sure that what's on that schedule is able for, they need to be able to understand it. You need to make sure that the graphics and the pictures that are on your schedule are easy enough for each student to make. I love this schedule because they have lowercase letters. Many schedules will say circle time, all in uppercase letters, or group time, all in uppercase letters. And this is actually the only handmade one that I have found that I really like because of the arrow. Now, someone said, I think Amy said it, where she uses pictures of her students doing the activities. That's exactly what we did. So we covered the pictures that were there and added pictures of our children, which gave that chart meaning to them. But keep in mind that upper and lowercase letters. So I'm just curious, when you label, say, your children's cubbies and you put their name, do you uppercase the first one letter and have the rest in lowercase? Or are you teaching them to recognize their name in uppercase letters first? How do you do it?
Upper and lower case, upper and lower. We use the uppercase. I just lost it. It's moving quickly. We use the uppercase for just the first letter.
Okay, and that's
Upper
the way
for the
you should
first
do it,
letter.
right? Yes. Because, and some of you have said that, you start with all uppercase and then you bring in the lower.
Yep.
However, think about it. When you're teaching the name recognition, or let's take Mary's name because she messed me up on my PowerPoint. So if I were going to use the name Mary, Mary is never going to see her name with Mary all in uppercase letters. So why am I teaching her to recognize the letters that way? So I think yes, exactly, Donna. Yes, with all words. Even when we when we label, say, the materials or something, why are we necessarily putting an uppercase letter? I'm not going to see the word blocks in with an uppercase B. So when in our classroom, when we had the shelves labeled as blocks, it was all lowercase letters. And basically they're really recognizing the words from seeing it. You're not able to sound them out. So we might as well start from the beginning and give them the opportunity to see words as they are really written in books and everything. Yeah, I love it, Janice. And
Mhm.
honestly, you made me super happy because I visit a lot of classrooms and I teach and do different things where we talk about literacy. And I would say 90% of the classes, everything's in uppercase. And they
Mhm.
say exactly what someone else said, in that they start with all uppercase, then they go and show them the lowercase. If you're going to do a letter L, there is an upper and a lowercase letter. In addition, that upper and lowercase letter makes a sound. So understanding that it's the letter L is wonderful, but that's not going to teach them to read. They need to understand that the letter L makes a L sound. And when I started out in early childhood, I had absolutely no experience. I had no clue what I was doing. My initial degree, it was in communications. And then I obviously went back and got my degree in early childhood and went on for my master's. But before that, I was just like kind of there. And I was there at the right time in the right place. And I went into the early childhood classroom. We did letters in order. I don't suggest you do it. But what happened is one of my children, and we learned so much from our children, right? One day she saw the letter CAT. When we did, and she looks at it and it was like, she didn't see them as CAT, she saw it as CAT because that's the way we were teaching it. But I never thought to put them together right away. And yet, right away, this little girl goes, Miss Lois, that spells cat. And it made me realize that if we teach the sounds of the letters together, these children are going to begin to put them together. So in our class, we would start with the word at, because we would start with A and T, at, and then we would add the letters that went together with at to form words. And then we moved from there. And I think that's really, really important. Definitely. I agree with you, Jeannie, 100%. But it's where you use the upper or lowercase letter that I think is important. But I agree. And I think they also need to understand that sound. Oh, I think they're so powerful, Dina. Those word families, once they learn and you pick and choose which letters you're going to offer in which order, they can put those letters together and form words without you even teaching them to read. It just happens. And then I have to share this. Then there's that amazing song. Have you ever heard that song that goes A, B, C, D? You know that alphabet song? What in the world is that teaching them? Nothing. But we're so proud that they can sing that. Oh, they know their alphabet. They don't know their alphabet. And as a director, I would say 9 out of 10 parents, maybe 10 parents out of 10 would come in and would tell me, my little girl, and not because they're my child, but she's super, super smart. Oh, what can she do or what? And she tells me, well, they know all the letters in the alphabet. Well, how do you know that? Because they go ahead, they can sing the alphabet song. Well, what does that tell them? And exactly what Devin said, that's how we taught the alphabet song. So we went abacada, and so on. Then when they saw the letters, because we would not sing it without pointing to the letters, then they could make that connection to what they're reading. But think about it. Many times we go ahead and we just sing that alphabet song. They don't know what an L is, and better yet, what's the letter LMNOP? Think about it. Think about how you choose to that letter. Yeah, and yet, what is it teaching them? I don't know, Susan. Okay, moving on.
Oh, quick question for you, Lois. We did have a couple questions. If we're not supposed to teach the alphabet in alphabetical order,
Okay,
how
wait.
is it
I'm not
recommended?
okay, I'm definitely not telling you how to teach. I'm just sharing with you how I would teach the alphabet and the letters. So in my school, and we're going to talk about it with some other ideas in a minute. I'm not going to teach it to them in order because I don't think that leads to their learning or to their ability to read, but that's just me. So we would start week 1 with the letter A, but we would only use the sound ah. I didn't think that my children could make the distinction between an A for apple and an A for airplane. So even when we did show and share, say with a letter sound, I would give the children, send in, say, an A object that starts with the sound of A, as in the word apple, say. And then we would do T the next week. And then we went back and we did B and C and F and H and letters that went with the ad. But that's the way I did it. There are many curriculums that say to start the beginning. There are other curriculums that start with letters that are the most used. So you have to do what is from what you're comfortable with. Yeah, absolutely, Pamela. Definitely having that picture makes it come alive. And I would say pictures with all children, right? Because they're able to make that connection. And I think that's super, super important. Okay, Mary, what else am I missing?
I think you've caught everything. Lots of
Okay.
comments and just sharing of
Okay,
ideas.
and it does teach the names of the letters. I agree, Danielle. But if they're just singing it without seeing the letters, it's teaching them just nothing. I mean, I can't get it through my head what that's teaching them, except perhaps the opportunity to hear the letters. And definitely, Dina, that's just another way to do it.
Mhm.
However, singing the alphabet song doesn't mean that in fact they understand how to read or they understand how to put words together. When we do the math workshop, we'll talk about that too, because children can count from 1 to 50, but if they don't know what 50 of something is, there's a problem. Oh, definitely, Heather. Huge thing. And we're going to talk about a way to do this, a way to do that show and share in just a minute. So if there are no more questions, I'm going to move on. I encourage you to do a morning message with your children because it makes print come alive. But if you're going to do a morning message, I would suggest you do it every morning and you stay consistent. And here's where repetition is really, really important. So what we did is it would always say good morning. But by the end of week 4, my children could recognize the words good and morning. Then, Amy, love it. Okay. Then it would say today is, and we would put the day of the week. And we would always do the day of a week in a different color. Now, these children have no clue what a Wednesday is. So that was a huge process for them to grasp. I always would put, we have lots of fun. And that was always there, the same words, and then something that we're going to do that day because it really, really motivated them for when are we going to hear that pizza story? When are we going to hear the pizza story? They were right there with us. And then I'm glad you're here. Love, Miss Lois. Again, it didn't take more than a month for them to begin to recognize these words within the morning message. It was also good for my parents to see that morning message when the children walked in, because my parents then would ask their children and we heard it. hey, tell me about reading that pizza story. What was it about? So hearing those questions was what much better for me than when a parent asked a child, what did you learn today in Miss Lois's class? And the child, nothing. So it was also acted as a conversation starter because my morning message was large enough that when my parents brought in their kiddos, they were able to say it. So just another idea. And think about what we did. Think about the learning that already happened. Think about all of the activities that happened even before we began our morning circle or our morning meeting. The kids felt valued and important. The children had opportunities to problem solve. Social skills were being built. They were learning about reading. They were recognizing print awareness. All of this within the first 15 minutes, because we would start our morning circle at say 9:15. I would always stick to those colors. Devin, really good question. Just because of the continuity of it, and just because it was, I guess, so much is through research that proves that that repetition is important to them. Good question. My morning message was just on a board, and it was fairly large, and I didn't want to use it, say, typed or something. I wanted to actually handwrite it. And so it was just large enough, and it was situated in a way that we kind of had to turn during morning circle to see it. But I didn't care about that because more important for me, I really wanted the parents to see it too. Okay, good. We're glad you're staying with us. So when we did, yeah, that's what you could use large chart paper. I mean, I was teaching in the days of the dinosaurs, so I still had a blackboard where I could actually write on with different colored chalk. So it worked. Okay. So I love this quote, and we're going to move, but I'm going to, oh, absolutely, Amber. They read what was on that board. My emails or my newsletters stayed in a pair in the backpack. And I do a 45-minute workshop. Maybe we'll do it sometime on how to write a newsletter that parents will read, because nothing bothered me more than opening their backpack and seeing those newsletters exactly the way I sent them home. I believe that all of my parents read my newsletters by the end. Anyway, young children who experience rich language environments, super important, have greater oral skills. We're talking about vocabulary, listening, and phonemic awareness. So we have that obligation to intentionally bring these experiences and strategies and games into our classrooms. So let's talk about it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the importance of early literacy because you guys have so much knowledge just from what I'm reading. But I do think it's important that we understand that when the children's comprehension needs to really be enhanced, and it's enhanced with written language. It's enhanced by vocabulary. It's enhanced by bringing in books, and not just books in the library, but bringing books into each center. We're going to talk about word walls in a minute. It's great to have a word wall in your classroom, but if you don't use the word wall, then that's a waste in your classroom. And teaching children that ability to manipulate sounds, it used to be something that we never did until kindergarten, maybe first grade. Now, kindergarten anticipates that children can go into their class and do this to a degree. And of course, print awareness, sharing that same book more than once. Why do we read a book, put it back on the library shelf? Why can't we motivate the child to maybe a picture walk, talk about the story, maybe put the book away and come back and read it tomorrow? And maybe make comparisons between what actually the book was about and what the children thought it was about. We're very quick to put those books back on the shelf, and we need to use those books in a way that's going to really prepare these children for kindergarten. I'm loving your hearts. I have no clue how you're doing it, but I'm loving them. Okay, I have no clue. Okay, so this just has the literacy skills, and I'm going to skip it just because of time and because of what I'm grasping from you. All of this I just kind of mentioned. Yeah, and I think that's so important, Leslie, and we're going to talk about that. But I'm going to move on because you guys are a lot smarter than I thought. So I'm super happy. We got a good group here. So I want to share with you some ideas that we would use to really encourage children to play with language. We talked about the letter chart. And like most of you said, leaving word pictures or adding pictures at the bottom underneath each letter is really important because it brings that connection. Now, probably I would add pictures also because they can't read the words. But what I really want them to see is that first letter, which makes that same sound. But when you have those letter charts that are up on the wall, many times they're way up in the top of the room. And I'm making all these comments and I realize nobody can see my picture because now I see where it would be. Okay, I guess the camera's not working. Moving on. Not that I'm surprised, but having those graphics I think is really important. But what I wanted to stress is if you have that letter chart way up at the sky, they can't see it. They have to look up to see it. You need to have that letter chart, in my opinion, where they can see it, where you're going to use it intentionally every day, and usually during morning circle as one of your activities. Otherwise, yes, it has to be at their eye level. And I bet if you go in most early childhood classrooms, it's way up top. It's like, that's great, but who's going to read it? And I think we need to be more intentional of where we're putting different things in the classroom. The
Hey,
same
Lois,
thing with
can I
this.
ask
Go
you a quick
ahead.
question?
Uh-huh.
Which slide are you on? Because I think at some point, I know I'm off with your slides, and I don't know why, but I think I am.
Because it's me.
No, because
I
it's
am on
glitchy, weird.
I am on slide 14.
Okay, I'm going to put it on slide 14. So hopefully people see slide 14, letter charts. Hopefully. Oh,
Well, now
goodness.
you messed me up. I need to go back. Okay.
Well, you should be able to sync, I think, because you should have presenter. You should be the one driving the whole thing, and it's not happening that way, and I don't know
No,
why.
because it should say at the bottom, sync to presenter. That's what it did when I did it with Todd, but it's not
Yeah,
showing that.
it's not working, and I don't
No.
know why. So,
Okay, but it's okay because it's me.
okay.
So this is my very, very favorite activity in our classroom. There is probably no such word as alphabeteer. If you go and talk to my children, they all want to be the alphabeteer. It was huge in my class. So here's what happened. On Friday, one child, and we would rotate, obviously, had the job of being an alphabeteer. So that child would take home a bucket and with a note in it. And the note would be basically to the parents to help the child fill the bucket with words that begin with the sound of, say, the letter B. And then I would give some examples because I wanted them to understand the sound that we're looking for more than, say, just an object. Now, if you're going to do this, first bit of advice is use a bucket with a top because otherwise you're going to use this bucket all week. And so if without that top, everything in the bucket can come out. Second of all, use a bucket that's probably about the size of the green one because the objects need to fit in the bucket or they're going to be all over. And the rule is if it doesn't fit in the bucket, they can't bring it in. Then on Monday, the alphabeteer got to come up in the front of the room and sit on a special alphabeteer chair. The exact same chair that they would use at their centers, but they thought it was a special chair. Then what happened is they would share the items that are in the bucket. So my bucket, or even that green bucket, even the blue one probably would work. Maybe the red one too, because it's wider, but the bucket couldn't hold that many objects. So my goal was maybe 7 or 8 items would be perfect. They took out the items, they talked about the item language, and if say a ball was in there, we would say a ball. So it was a ball. And we would go over the sound of the letter. Then on Tuesday, the alphabeteer came back up again and would ask his friends or her friends, do you remember what's in the bucket? Remember that each item began with a B sound. So if they came up with the word crayon, the child is going to tell them there wasn't a crayon in the bucket. Plus, we're going to recognize that crayon doesn't start with a B sound. The children loved it. They were taking on the role of the teacher. It would be their responsibility to say to call on Mary. No one seemed to interrupt. They seemed to wait their time. It was a big deal. On Wednesday, we used the same item. So one child went to the door and covered their eyes. Most of the time they cheated, but they look with their fingers. But the alphabeteer took one item from all the items were on the floor. So the alphabeteer took one item exactly and like sat on it or hid it behind their back or whatever. Then the child who hid their eyes, and sometimes we did pairs, whoever was hiding their eyes, they would come back and they would have to recognize based on the items that were on the ground what was missing. Huge for these little ones. Exactly. Huge. They could have sat and done this probably for an hour. And we just kept on going while they were interested. So it wasn't really at a time constraint. On Thursday, my favorite part, we took the items out of the bucket and we wrote a story using the letters in the bucket. But if Mary was the alphabeteer, we would begin the story. Mary liked to play with the ball or whatever. So, and then we would go on and use every item that was on the floor in the story. Then on Friday, the alphabeteer got to sit on my lap, which was a huge big deal. And I would ask the children if they could share or act out some of the things that were part of the story. Then I read the letter I read the story to them. Every Friday, all of the children took home a copy of the story. So by the end of the year, my parents had 26 stories that went along with the alphabet bucket. And you can believe they were going to keep it because many of them had their child's name in it. And then, of course, a new alphabeteer took the letter bucket home. But think about the language and the memory and problem solving and letter sounds and phonological awareness, because sometimes 2 items might rhyme. It was just super cool and it worked. We began this, believe it or not, with 2s. And I realized the 2s couldn't talk or couldn't, and it was the parent filling the bucket. But with the 2s, we might use that very tiny orange bucket. And I didn't care if the parents put the items in there. I wanted to begin. I wanted, and then with 3s and 4s, we did it where they really had that control. Okay, and I had Tabitha asked about how would I encourage parents to read these stories. The stories never went in the backpacks. The children took the stories home to their mom because they were authors of the story. My 4s would illustrate the story together as a group, but I wasn't going to really get into that, but I'm going to answer your question. So it took a simple activity that we began with 2s and we kind of advanced it. I believe in my heart, and I really believe this, Tabitha, is that my parents read these stories because the children came back and would share. Oh, or the parent, oh, I love the story. How cute. I can't believe you used all my items in a story or whatever. But I didn't care if it didn't come back. That was okay. But I didn't want it to come back really. However, I I think because I gave them the actual story, they went ahead and they made a big deal with them. And we might ask the children on Monday, how many of you read the story? And I would say 90% of them shared the story because they were so excited to bring that story home for mom to share. I learned in my school, and again, I can't tell you what to do. I can just share what worked for us. If we put it in the backpack, 10 times it stayed there. If we gave artwork to the children, the moms made a big deal about it, or the dads or the grandparents. If we left the artwork in the backpack, they got creased and it wouldn't go home. So good. And here's the deal. You need to email me and let me know how it works in your classroom. That would be super cool. Okay, moving past the alphabeteer. This kind of talks about some of the ideas and the questions that you talked about. I would always, well, most of the time, do a picture walk with my kids, asking them what they think the story is about, because that gave me an opportunity to introduce, say, targeted vocabulary words. It gave them an opportunity to learn the words that when I began reading it, I didn't have to stop and explain, which is part of the reason that I did multiple readings of the same story, giving them an opportunity to recall a part of the story, maybe to retell a part of the story. We would always put the books in dramatic play area or in a different area, giving them that opportunity to really retell the entire story, asking them what is your favorite part and doing a compare and contrast. Super cool with them because I was involving them more than just reading the story. Plus, if we were reading, say, Brown Bear, it didn't matter if we finished it or if they weren't into it. I would take that story and I would just put it away, give them maybe a brain break, and then we might come back and read it, or I might share it tomorrow. It doesn't mean that because they weren't interested in today, that they're not going to be interested another day. So that was like important to me. Most of the time I would have items that go along with the story. They were all in bags. We actually sent stories home once a week with activities, but again, that's for another day. So different ways to include it. All of my kids had mailboxes. Now they have no clue what a mailbox even is. I encourage you to do mailboxes in your classroom. In my school, my kiddos teamed up and were pen pals with a preschool in China. It was the coolest experience ever. They would actually get letters because they weren't going back and forth with the computer then. And when those letters came in and they opened it, and it was actually from people who lived in China, it was just, we learned so much. And then we wrote a letter and we put a stamp on it and whatever, and we mailed them back. What we began to do with the letters or with the mailboxes is I put happy grams in the children's mailbox so they would know because the flag would be up. Parents were encouraged to put a letter certain times of the month in the child's mailbox. I would never let one parent put say a letter in and not have everyone. However, it depended on what the purpose was. We made birthday cards for the children whose birthday it was. We surprised the child with them in the mailbox. When I used to get postcards from wherever we went and we'd put them in the mailbox. What was I doing? I was really teaching them to read. And they then every week had a pen pal in the class also. So say Susan might send a letter to Lisa, and then Lisa might share her drawing with Michelle, and Michelle might make a cute little picture or whatever. But we used the mailboxes. The mailboxes had the children's names on it, so we did name recognition, and it really helped their self-esteem. But if you do the mailboxes, you need to be really, 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 I was just going to say that, Mary, exactly. That's how we made them, out of tissue boxes. But now I forget what I was going to say. Okay, well, we're going to move on. When Mary and I think alike, it's a problem, so I'm just going to move on. We also did continue the storybooks in our school, in our class, all the time. So I would say once or twice a week, I would start a story, and we would go around the morning, like the carpet, and each child would continue the story. I actually included a few here and I took them out just because of time, but it was very simple, such as Lois went to the beach and then another child's going to add to it, and another child's going to add to it. So our continue the stories became so, I guess, powerful that what we did is we sent continue the stories books home to parents. So we would start a story in the class together as a group. Then Michaela is going to take it home because her job is to continue the story person. Michaela is going to take that job super serious. All she's going to do is take that home, and Michaela and mommy and daddy are going to do the next page of the continue the storybook. There were explicit instructions. Then Michaela brought the story back. We read the story, including Michaela's ideas, and then Michaela got to choose which one of her friends would be the next person to continue the story. Sometimes the stories made sense. Sometimes they were way off in space, but it didn't matter. What mattered is I was bringing literacy into the children's homes, which I think was really, really important for them. Whoops. Okay, I'm sure that most of you are probably doing DEAR, but I felt that, Jennifer, if you email me, I'd be happy to help you. Definitely, Lorraine. We did DEAR all the time. If my kids were acting up and there was a challenge, all I had to do was say DEAR, and they would come right over to me, sit down right where I was. They would drop what they were doing, and I would read a story. Excuse me. Whether it was a classmate book or continue the story, or I'm sure you do hanging up the laundry with different stories. It didn't matter. They were just going to drop what they were doing and come in, and we were going to share a story. It was also a great way for us. Exactly. It was a great transition for us. And I would be very picky on the story I'm going to read, because many times I might read them one or two pages, and then I would say, I'm not going to finish it until we're done lunch. And as soon as we were done lunch, they were right away, tell me about it, tell me about it, tell me about it. And that was really powerful. Okay, we'll share. Oh, we're going off track. Okay, hanging up the laundry. What we did is we would take pictures from the story and then the children, we had just like a laundry basket, and in the laundry basket was all these pictures, and we had the actual clips, like they would hang up the laundry basket, which I really like because that's small motor skills, right? And then the children took the pictures and put the pictures in the order of the story, hanging them up on the laundry. So they actually had a line in the class that they used to actually go ahead and hang up the laundry. So the laundry was really their pictures, but it was just another way to involve them. And I did not have to go ahead and give them, say, directions. All I had to do was put out a laundry basket in one of the centers, and the children knew what to do. So it was also an easy activity for me at the beginning of the day because I didn't have to give them a lot of instructions. Okay, just because of time, I don't know which one, what to share and whatnot. I'm going to kind of skip this just a little bit because I want to be, I want to, I want to, I want to represent or be to your time. I can't move. There we go. I want to make sure, okay, I wanted to make sure that I talk about these because I actually did something similar. And I want, if you're not, is anybody here right now using Story Stones? I'm on slide 29. Thanks, Michelle. Is anyone using Story Stones? And not a word wall. Thanks, Janice. Okay, so let me tell you about Story Stones. Story Stones was just another way for me. Okay, you're going to hear about it now, Leslie, to bring stories and language into the classroom. We had very little money, and I needed to come up with ideas that were super, super inexpensive. So what we did with Story Stones is we would get these stones from the dollar store. Home Depot has it, Lowe's has them. We actually had the dollar store donate bags of these to us because if they received these rocks and the bag was open, they couldn't sell them. So we didn't care, just give me the rocks. They're super soft and you get tons of them in one bag. You have to make sure that if you're going to use the stones, that there's no roughness and they're not just ones that are where you can't use the actual where it's going to hurt them. And a lot of people use the wooden spoons. I don't like the wooden spoons. I like the stones because I can put them, it gave me a little bit more room and it just worked. But that's just me. Definitely the wooden spoons basically do the same thing. So we purchased the stones. Then I took images from different books or stickers or something like that. And you put, oh, definitely wooden spoons for puppets. Oh, we could do a whole workshop on puppets. Absolutely. The best puppets are wooden spoons, especially when you use wool, different types of yarn and whatever. Definitely. Okay. Anyway, we cut out pictures from the magazine or we use stickers and then you just put it on the actual stone, cover it with Mod Podge. I put some glitter stickers here and they can go into say dramatic play or whatever. Now watch some of the things that we did with it. So I could put, say, all of these, the ones under dramatic play. So I have animals here. I'm teaching the children the name of the animal, the name of the baby animal, and they can take these stones and say, put it in a barn and tell a story. So here's an example of what we did in the actual classroom. The rabbit or the bunny jumped over the rainbow. The man gave the lady a flower. It doesn't get any easier and it's super, super fun. So this is an example of actually children using the story stone, say with a barn. We did something like this with community helpers. These are actually our stones. That's the whole idea. Put those stones out and let them tell a story. And they don't have to be together. So we don't need just the animals or whatever, because they're going to come up with those stories, Mary, that's going to be amazing. I love this. This is not mine, but we did copy it. But I just think it's the coolest way to use story stones for the Very Hungry Caterpillar, because look how easy they could pull the stones away. But what I liked about the stones is very easy for them to sequence a story. Okay. So I definitely wanted to talk about story stones. I just thought it was important. And I'm just going to be very quick, and I know my time's up, but I do encourage you to do bookmaking in your classroom. And maybe sometime Mary will let me do a workshop on bookmaking, but you would have to bring some stuff in order to make your own books. But I will say my goal in my school was by October, all of the books in my classroom library were books that the children made. And then we had library books coming in and rotating, because I found that when children wrote their story, when children got involved with making those books, and we made all kinds of books, but the more they were involved in the books, the more they were going to read them. Plus, how cool is it that a 4-year-old can go home and say, I'm an author and an illustrator? I mean, that's awesome. Or the fact that I can use one story to share the words the children know, share the words children can sound out, and new words. And Mary brought up a really important aspect. If they're going to make their own books, letting them bring their culture into the story and bring in their own pictures, really important. And send those books home and let the children go and enlarge on it or add to it. Really important. We did books out of potato chip cans. We did books with paper bags, any of that, but allowing the child to do exactly what kind of what Mary said, to allow them to choose a topic, because once they're involved with that topic, you've got them. Once you get to that point, they're there. So I could probably talk about this now for another 2 hours, but I am going to be respectful of your time. And I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to share with you. And my only goal is that you walk away with at least one idea, and then I feel like I did my job. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, Lois. Oh my goodness, one idea. I think they walked away with like a dozen, at least, ideas. So thank you all for coming. Just to let you know, we will include, I'm pretty sure Lois is already said we could include the PowerPoint presentation in the email that will go out to you with your certificate. So there'll be a separate link in there with access to that document. And so you'll be able to
Mary, can
look
I
back.
just add one thing? I'm
You
sharing the
sure?
PowerPoint, but you guys can't reuse the PowerPoint because
Hmm.
the PowerPoint is actually, um, what's the word I'm looking for?
Proprietary.
Yes, from Creative Beginning Steps, which was my
Yep.
company.
Yep.
So you can use all this idea and rewrite it in your own words.
Yes, absolutely. And it'll come to them in a PDF as well. A locked PDF just because it travels better that way as well. So that way it'll be easier for you to look at. And then yes, to just keep it as your own resource to be able to put and implement these activities in your classroom with your kiddos or in your family childcare or with your grandkids or however you like to use it. I think it's so applicable on so many levels. That email will go out to you within 48 business hours of this webinar. So please don't email me tonight, tomorrow, or the next day. Give us 48 business hours to get it out to you. If you do not have it by Friday evening, then let me know if you haven't received it. A couple of quick things. Yahoo will block us every single time. If you were able to be lucky enough to even get into this session with a Yahoo email, you are miraculous. And if you need to, might want to make sure that Yahoo accepts emails from Rasmussen University. So you might need to double check what Yahoo is blocking for you. They're notorious for that. Same thing with AOL. AOL is also notorious for blocking a lot of things. Otherwise, you might want to look in your spam folders or your junk folders because sometimes it'll sort it as not a priority email and send it to your side email or secondary email or other email, depends on what it says. So be sure to do all the looking for it before you email me, because I'll tell you to go do that anyway. So do it before you let me know, and then we can double check. I also want you to know that I am tracking attendance through the behind the scenes. So you do not need to email me or send me any of your registry numbers or your names or anything like that to prove your attendance. That's all done electronically through the system. So if you attended most of this session, then you will get the certificate. So I am so thankful that you all could be here tonight. We hope that you can attend the next sessions, which will be, I think it's math in November and science in December. So you will probably get, along with your certificate, a reminder about those sessions. If you haven't signed up for those already, you can do so. And I look forward to seeing you again. Have a great evening, everyone. Tamika, I like that emoji. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you so much, Lois. You're a treasure. Look forward to
Thank,
seeing you in the next one.
thank you.